I'm going to show you how you can use Gadget to build a full stack, single-click BigCommerce app that automatically adds search keywords to products.
Let's get started building our full stack single-click BigCommerce app. I've already gone ahead and set up a BigCommerce partner account, and I have a sandbox store I'm going to use. I'll start by creating a new app in Gadget. I'm just going to go to gadget.new. I'm going to select the BigCommerce app type and give my app a name. I will just call this auto add search keywords. Perfect. So I'm going to start by connecting to BigCommerce. I'm just going to click this button here on my home page. At this point, I need to go ahead and create an app in the BigCommerce dev portal. So here I am. Click create an app. I will also call this auto add search keywords. Look at that. Press create. And I'm prompted to enter my callback URLs. So Gadget's going to provide those for me. I'm just going to copy and paste my auth callback URL first. And then I will do my load callback URL. Perfect. Gadget also does have your uninstall and remove user callback URLs. If I click show all URLs, these are right here. I'll do uninstall. I'm not going to do remove user for now, but I will paste the uninstall in there. That's excellent. I need to now select the OAuth scopes here in BigCommerce that I want to give my app access to. So because I want to be able to read in my product descriptions and then write search keywords back to BigCommerce, I need modify products. That's the only scope I need for this app. So I am happy with this. I will scroll down to the very bottom, press update and close, and confirm this update. I'm now going to click view client ID and copy my client ID and secret back to Gadget. There's my ID. Copy the secret and confirm to move on. So Gadget's going to give me a link here. I'm going to now install my BigCommerce app on one of my sandboxes. I will select Riley's Gadget Sandbox Store and press continue. And here we are in my sandbox control panel. I'm going to go to my auto add search keywords app and install. Gadget's going to handle all of BigCommerce's OAuth for me. I don't need to write any custom code, certainly no custom OAuth code. And here we go. My app is now installed here in my control panel. This is actually a React front end built with the Big Design library. As you can see, edit this page, web/route/index.jsx. If I go back to Gadget, I see I'm successfully connected. I can close this little pop-up. And in my web folder, this is my front end project, I see web route index.jsx. So this is the React file, the JSX file, that is powering my sandbox experience here, my application. So that's fantastic. My app is installed. I have my full stack app here, and I'm ready to start building. Just a quick little tour of what we did when we set up this connection. You'll notice in the API folder, we do have a BigCommerce model, and this is for the store. So if I click on the schema, this is going to manage my store hash for me. It's going to contain my access token. This is the only model we've created by default. So when we want to store product data here, we will go ahead and create our own data model. And that's actually what we can do now. So I want a place to be able to store BigCommerce product data here in my Gadget database. What I can do is right click on BigCommerce and click add model and just enter product. So that's fantastic. This created a new table in the underlying Postgres database that Gadget is managing for me. And it gave me some default fields, just an ID. This is going to be a Gadget ID, not my BigCommerce ID. And then updated that and created at timestamps. And I can go ahead and add fields to this model to match the BigCommerce model and store whatever data I need. So what I'm going to do, first off, for all data models that I'm creating to store BigCommerce data, I'm going to create a BigCommerce ID field. I'm going to make this a number, and I'm going to add some validations to it. I'm going to add uniqueness so that these numbers are unique, and I'll make it required. Now, I'm only going to build a private single tenant app, not a public app. If you're building a public app, you will want to scope your uniqueness by another field. I'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm going to store this BigCommerce ID. I'll store my product name. I will store search keywords. Just leave these as string fields, and my product description, because that's what I'm going to be reading in and using to determine what keywords to send back to BigCommerce. Name is a required field, so I will go ahead and make name required just to match BigCommerce's data model. I'm going to add one more field here called store, and this is going to be a relationship field. And so I'm going to relate each product back to the store that it belongs to. So I'm going to select this belongs to relationship. So BigCommerce product belongs to BigCommerce store. And now I select the inverse of the relationship. BigCommerce store has many products. A store with one product may be possible, but probably isn't super popular. So I'm going to select the has many relationship there. So now my two data tables are related. If I were building a multi-tenant app, a public app available on the marketplace, I could go back to my BigCommerce ID field and scope this field by the store relationship. And the reason I do that is because it allows me to have each BigCommerce ID unique to that store. So if one store has a product with an ID of 6, another store has a product with an ID of 6, you can have 2 6s in your database, but it's unique to those stores. So that's just an important little tidbit when you're building multi-tenant apps. I'm not going to do that now. So there's my product data model. It's ready to go. It's ready to store the BigCommerce data that I need here in my gadget database. So now I'm going to add another data model to my app. I'm going to go up to this API models folder here and click this plus button. And I'm going to call this model search keyword. And this is the model I'm going to use to store keywords entered by merchants. I'm not creating it in the BigCommerce namespace because it's not native BigCommerce data. This is custom data we're collecting for this app. And similar to my product model, I can go ahead and add some fields. I will just go ahead and add a value field. It's going to be a string, and I will make it required. I could also set a relationship to the store on this model if I was building a multi-tenant app. I'm not going to do that because I'm not building that kind of app. Fantastic. So I'm done with my data modeling. As I've been creating these models, you'll notice we have these actions files for my product and for my search keyword. I've actually been auto-generating a CRUD API, that's create, read, update, and delete, that I can use to interact with my database. These CRUD actions are exposed as code, so I own them. I can make whatever changes I want. And these are triggered by API endpoints. I actually need to go ahead and call api.searchkeyword.create to go ahead and save something to my database. Right now, by default, it's just going to go ahead and save. It's not going to do anything else. I can, of course, add code to do that. I don't need to for this application, or at least quite yet. The next thing I want to do for my app is subscribe to BigCommerce webhooks. Product webhooks in particular. I want to be able to get product data in so that when a product is created or updated in BigCommerce, we're able to run our custom code, see if any of the saved search keywords are within that product description, and then write them back to BigCommerce. To do that, I am going to go ahead and I've got my actions folder here. I'm going to click the plus button next to it, and I'm going to go BigCommerce, which will create a BigCommerce namespace. Nice little folder for organizing. And I'll call my actual action handle product webhooks.js. Fantastic. So this created a new action file for me. And what this will do is handle my BigCommerce webhooks. To actually subscribe to webhooks here, I edit my triggers off to the right. So if I click on this plus, click on BigCommerce, I can now select the webhooks that run this action. This is just a serverless function. So if I go product created, product updated, and I'll also handle product deleted. So these are all the webhooks I'm going to fire. I can also remove this generated API endpoint. I only want this action to be triggered by webhooks, so I can just go ahead and do that. And what this is going to do, we want this action to take the webhook payload. My webhook payload is only going to contain my product ID, so I need to make a separate request to BigCommerce, get the rest of my product data, and then I can store it in my gadget database. Or if it's a deleted webhook, delete it. So I'm just going to paste some code over top. There we go. So this is how I'm handling my webhooks. Gadget actions have this high context parameter that give you the tools you need to interact with the rest of your app. Params are my incoming webhook payload. This is going to be the ID of the product that is being sent by BigCommerce. Logger is the built-in logger. So you see Gadget has a loggers tool. We'll take a look at that in a bit. API is the API client that I use to interact with the rest of my Gadget app. You can see that is what I am using to, in this case, delete product data. And I'm also calling it down here to create and upsert or update or create product data as well. Connections give me access to a BigCommerce API client. That is how I am going ahead. You see I'm using it here, connections.bigcommerce.current. I'm initializing this API client. I'm using the current store context. So because the webhook is coming in, I know what store is firing that webhook. I can initialize a client for that particular store, and then I can just go ahead and call the BigCommerce API and get the rest of my product data. Finally, trigger is my complete webhook payload, and I'm just using trigger.scope to determine what webhook is coming in and have the custom code in an if statement, or I'm using a fancy switch statement down below to manage these incoming webhooks. So quickly walking through this code, this is going to run whenever any of these webhooks are fired. If we're getting a deleted webhook, just because this is like a case where I don't need to fetch any more data, I really just need to delete the record from my Gadget database. I'm checking to see using api.bigcommerce.product. Once again, that is BigCommerce product. It's just how I'm calling that action through my API. Maybe find first is how I'm reading data. So I am filtering by the incoming BigCommerce ID that I have stored on my product, and I'm just selecting the ID field. All I need is the ID. If it exists, if this record exists, I am going ahead and just calling my delete action for my product to remove that product from the Gadget database. Just keeps things in sync with BigCommerce. If it's not a delete webhook, I have a bit of work to do. I need to go fetch the rest of the product payload. So once again, I'm initializing a BigCommerce API client. If I just skip over to my package.json file, Gadget is just a node backend. My actions are just serverless node functions. And we're using the Space48 BigCommerce API client here. So that's all I am calling and initializing right here. And then I'm just using that API client to get my product. So this will be my complete product information. If a product is found in BigCommerce, I am just generating a payload that I actually want to save. So whether it's an update or a create, this is the shape of the product. This is my product model, for example. I've got my BigCommerce ID. That's just my product ID coming from BigCommerce. My product name, description, any existing search keywords. And then I'm also adding a link to the current BigCommerce store. And I can get that current store ID with connections.bigcommerce.current store ID. And this is the ID of the store record in Gadget, not in BigCommerce. Finally, I'm once again using my trigger scope to see what webhook is fired. If it's a created webhook, I'm just going ahead and calling create. If it's not, I am calling an upsert action. What upsert does is it determines whether or not the record already exists in the database. If it doesn't, it calls a create under the hood. Otherwise, it's going to update the existing record. And you see, I'm passing in my product to save payload as well as on. And this uses these two fields, my BigCommerce ID and that connection to the store, to determine uniqueness for the record. So if I see a record with the same BigCommerce ID for this store, I'm just going to update it. And that's all I need to do to actually handle my incoming webhooks. Now I need to go ahead and when this webhook comes in, go through any of my saved search keywords, and if there's a match to the product description, write them back to BigCommerce. So I'm actually just going to go ahead. I want to add some code to my create and update actions here for my product model. And I want my create and update actions to do the same thing. They're going to share the same code. So I don't want to copy and paste the same code. I can actually click on my product model, add a new file just called utils.js. I'm just going to paste some code in here. I'm going to go through this in a little bit. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to wire it up to my create and update action, and then I'll go through and explain what's happening here. I do want to call this get keywords function in my create and update actions though. So what I'm going to go ahead and do in my create action, just paste over top. You can see I'm importing get keywords from my utils file, calling it in my onSuccess function. And I'm going to do the exact same thing in my update. There we go. The one difference is that in update, I'm checking to see if a product has a description and if it has changed. So Gadget does have built-in change detection, and this helps us deal with webhook loops. If I get an updated webhook from BigCommerce and then write an update to that product, it'll fire another webhook, which will cause me to write back to BigCommerce. It'll run infinitely, and we want to avoid that. So I can use this built-in change detection to see, do I even need to run my custom code? Do I need to write back to BigCommerce? If not, don't bother, it'll break that webhook loop. Just like my global action that I used to handle my webhooks, my model actions here have a high context parameter. A lot of them look the same. We have our params, our logger, our API connections. The one difference is the record. Because this is a model action, it is specific to a single record in your database. So this record in particular is how I do change detection, and I am just passing that into my get keywords function. And this record will have all of the latest data that I've already saved in my database. My run function goes before my on success. The reason I have my code in on success is because I am writing back to BigCommerce. Run is transactional, so if it fails, everything that happens in run will be rolled back. If I've written to BigCommerce as part of my run function and I have to roll back, that write to BigCommerce isn't something we can easily roll back. So that's why I have it in on success. Into the utils function, just walking through get keywords quickly. We are taking our record, API logger, and connections. I'm just using a set to go ahead and parse out the unique words in my product description. Remember, record is my product. I am going ahead and I'm calling api.searchkeyword.findMe to just read all of my stored search keywords, and then I'm just mapping the value. So this is, once again, just an array of strings, keywords entered by merchants. Finally, I am using a filter on my description words, and I'm just iterating through each word to see if my saved keywords includes it. If it does, this final array is what I want to write back to BigCommerce. So if there are any existing search keywords, I am just appending them to my new array. I don't want to overwrite any search keywords that already exist. I just want to add on to the existing contents. And this is a little messy. I'm doing an array from a set and then splitting the string. Just because search keywords is stored as a string, I'm using a set to remove duplicates and then just transforming that set into an array. I'm going to write all of these arrays back to my gadget logger. Take a peek at that in a tick. And then I am going ahead, I am grabbing my current store here. This is a store record stored in my gadget database. I'm going api.bigcommerce.store find by. I am just grabbing the store ID stored on my product. That's that relationship we set up. And I'm selecting the store hash. And the reason I need that is because I need to initialize my API client using the store hash. So when my global action was called from the webhook context, we know the context of that action. We can automatically set up that API client. Because this is a model action being called from my global action, that context is lost. So I need to manually set up my API client using the store hash. And this is how I do that. Finally, I'm using my initialized BigCommerce API client to go ahead and just update the existing product with our array or string of search keywords. So that's what's going on here. This is all the logic of my file. It's 40 lines of code. It's pretty quick, built on top of the webhook handling. So not a lot of code to build an application. The last thing I need is a front end that allows merchants to actually go ahead and enter search keywords. So I'm going to go ahead, paste over this index file that I showed before. There we go. Once again, this is just using big design components, big design icons. All of these things are pre-installed. Gadget front ends also come pre-installed with an API client I can use to interact with my app's API. And finally, we have a suite of React hooks we can use to interact with our API in a little more Reactful way. I'm going to walk through this code in a bit. First, let's test out our application because we should be finished with one small caveat. So if I just refresh this, my front end looks different. That's good. I see an error. Permission denied. This is a happy error. Gadget has authorization built in, so merchants here in the control panel can't actually call APIs that they aren't granted access to. So if I go back to Gadget, click on the access control folder and open up permissions. You see, I've got my search keyword model as well as my product model and store. So merchants already have access to the store API because that's information they already own. If I needed to, I could grant my BigCommerce app users role, which is granted to my merchant automatically. I could grant them access to the product APIs. It's not needed for this app, so I'm not going to. What I need to do is grant merchants access to read, create, and delete. I'm not actually updating search keywords in my app, so I'm not going to worry about it. So now if I go ahead and refresh, I should not see an error. And there we go. We have a little table instead with no search keyword. So let's try this out. Let's add a keyword. Let's go sweater. It's in our table. Let's go cozy. It's in our table. Let's go warm. You might be sensing a theme here. It's in our table. I'm not interested in cozy sweaters. It's not a search keyword I want to key on. I can go ahead and delete this and it's removed. And as I'm adding and removing search keywords here in my front end, if I go back to Gadget and check out the data page for my search keywords, I can see they are being added and removed. So that's fantastic. So we can actually test out this app now. Now I have a few search keywords. If I go ahead, sweater and warm, and let's go ahead and try adding a new product. And I will go sweater, spell it correctly. I do need to enter a price, $100, expensive sweater, 1 kgs. That seems heavy, but I'm not too sure how much sweaters are supposed to weigh. And let's add a description with one of our keywords. So this is we can even do both of our, cozy sweater. We removed cozy, so that's okay. So because sweater is in here and it's also one of my search keywords entered by myself in the control panel, when I click save, it'll fire that product created webhook, run our custom backend code, and it should write my search keywords back to my sweater product here. So let's go check it out. If I peek at my logs in Gadget, I can see things are happening. So we do have the log statement from our backend code. We can see we have our search keywords here, sweater, so it should have been written back to my product. If I go here and refresh the page in BigCommerce and scroll all the way down, in fact, we'll just go search keywords, sweater has been written to my product. My other stored keyword, I'll just double check it. I believe it was warm. Let's test out. It is warm. Let's go ahead and test out to see if that actually works. When I update cozy sweater, that is also warm. And save that. It'll fire that update webhook, run the exact same backend code. Once again, if I peek in Gadget, now sweater and warm are my search keywords. So if I go ahead, refresh this page, sweater and warm are my search keywords. So my app is working. If I go ahead and delete this product, it'll also be removed from my Gadget database. I'm not going to walk through that now. So that was our end-to-end full stack single-click app build for BigCommerce. At the end of the written tutorial, we do also have a little code snippet that will sync all of our existing data when I install my app on a store, or we can abstract that code to a separate action that's run. And so that's if I want to run all of my existing products through my custom code, I have a way to do that. I'm not going to walk through that right now, but check out our written tutorial if you want to do that optional step. So that's fantastic. My app is working. Let's quickly walk through the front end code here. So this is my front end file. Like I mentioned before, it is built with Big Design, and we're using some Gadget React hooks to manage this front end state. I've got a useFindMany hook, and I'm passing in api.searchKeyword. And what this is doing is calling useFindMany on my search keyword data model. It's just reading any stored records. I get my returned records back in the data object. Fetching is a Boolean that is going to be used to display a loading spinner, and then error is used to show any error information to users. I also have a useAction hook, and this is how I'm calling my delete action in the table. I'm actually calling bulk delete because we can select multiple products in that table. And I'm triggering that. Once again, we get data fetching an error. I'm triggering this delete action with a delete keywords callback function. And if I scroll down here, you can see I'm just calling that as part of the on-click on the button that is part of my stateful table component. So it's just one of my actions. I'm calling delete keywords and passing in the IDs of the keywords that I want to delete. Finally, Gadget has a useAction form hook. I love useAction forms, super jazzed about it. I am going ahead and passing in my create action. This is how I am creating my new search keywords in my database. You'll notice that there's no manual form state being managed here. We have selected keywords. That's just for selected keywords in the data table. But in terms of what's in my input box on my form, I'm not managing it. And that's because useActionForm wraps the React hook form library. So all of my form state is actually handled for me. I get submit, which is just my submit call. You can see I'm calling that on submit, which fires this create action with my current form state. I'm using register. I'm passing in the name of my field, which is value on my search keywords model. And that's all I need to do. You notice on my input, I'm not managing on change. I'm not managing the current value. useActionForm and this spread register return is handling all of that for me. Finally, I have an error. Once again, I'm using this just to show an error when I need to. There's a reset function I'm calling to clear out the form after I go ahead and submit. And there's some form state. I am just using this to disable the button and debounce it so I don't go crazy on the add keyword button. So that is our end-to-end full stack single click app build for BigCommerce. If you have any questions, you can check out our documentation, including the written version of this tutorial. We also have our Gadget Developer Discord. We're always happy to help answer questions. And if you have any issues with this tutorial or about developing on BigCommerce in general, jump in there. We're happy to help. Until next time, I hope you keep building more and coding less with Gadget.